next on Turn Up the Volume podcast.
So before you play anything, I need to know what you feel. What type of music you like? What are your thoughts concerning the church? Because you can't hate the church,
And then
and
play
I
for me.
love the church, and you just gonna come get a check.
I've been watching him for some time, and when I tell you he is a trailblazer, he is an awesome man of God, a fireball, a preacher, or as my father-in-law would say, a preacher's preacher. He's none other than the Reverend Brent A. Brown, pastor of the Greater Harvest Baptist Church of Baltimore, Maryland. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Doing good.
Listen, I'm excited to have you on. Listen, I'm gonna tell you something. I was wondering if you was gonna respond and even come on, but I was excited to know that you were excited to come on.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, no doubt, no doubt, no
thank
doubt.
you so
I
much for
I
coming
have no
on,
reason not to.
man. Listen, and I think so on my show, because I know this is your first time on. So on my show, I talk about a lot of different things. I have theological discussions, discussions that relate to the African American experience, politics here and there, and so sometimes I even talk to people where they tell me their own life stories sometimes. But this particular topic I thought was very interesting because when you think of the black church, African American church, one of the things that stands out to me is music,
Yes, sir.
the exuberance, spirituals, Negro spirituals, hymns, and all those wonderful things. And like I said, I've been following you for some time, so I know a little bit of your story,
Hmm.
but what better way than to invite the actual individual on to tell a little bit about who they are and where they come from and to share. And so tonight we
Hmm.
talk about music in the African American church. So I guess first tell us who you are and give us a bit of a background. Because I watched, I think, a short story, like a short documentary on YouTube that I found
Okay.
recently. Where you
Yeah.
talk a
One
little
of
bit
so
about, yeah. So first of all, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, and how did you? Because you were playing music. You were a musician before you were pastoring, right?
yes, sir. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
good.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir. So to give a shout out to that documentary, my youth and young adult minister, Minister Aaron Stewart,
okay.
um, he took multimedia production at Morgan State. Shout out to Morgan, and for one of his classes that was his final, he had to do a documentary, and so he was kind enough to choose his pastor for that. So if you ever see that,
Yes,
I
sir.
think it's called A Portrait of Ministry. It's on Greater Harvest YouTube page. So
YouTube.
that's what that was, that little snippet. And so shout out to him for putting that out there too. But my name is Brent Brown, born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. Uh, Grew up at the Sweet Hope Free Will Baptist Church. My great grandparents were there. When my grandmother was 9 years old, is when they joined Sweet Hope. And
Mm,
so my family has been rooted in Sweet Hope Free Will Baptist Church for years. And so that's where I was raised in the city of Baltimore by my mom and my aunt and my grandmother.
okay.
And I started with music um, as a kid, like many of us, sitting in church and playing the back of the pews as if I was playing the organ. And
Mm-hmm.
so, start out with that. And my grandmother and mother got me a keyboard, and I literally started picking up stuff by ear, literally just picking up stuff by ear. Um, and so my grandmother went to our church's musician, um, who ended up being my mentor, and who many people in Baltimore thought literally was my father because we resembled so much. Corey Smith, his real name was Chalene McCoy Smith Jr., but we all knew him as Corey. And so uh, Went to Corey, asked when he started working with me. He said, of course, started working. And when we started working together, he said that he knew it was the Lord because he tried many times to work with different people and it would not work out. But when we worked together, it literally just kept flowing and I was able to pick up and take so many things that he taught me. And I started playing at 9, um, 13 years old. I was playing at a church, St. Paul Free Will Baptist Church, 23rd Street in East Baltimore. At 13 years old, I had first and third Sundays and started playing for other churches. Jesus of Nazareth Free Will Baptist Church. So I mean, and literally from there, it just started taking off, and I just started playing and kept growing, kept trying, and the rest was history.
Mm. So let me ask you this: your mentor, Chillian McCoy Smith. Um, I found out that I knew of him and I've met him when I was a lot younger because he used to come to
Mm-hmm.
my dad's home church. And I have my own memory of Minister McCoy, or as Coy they would call him. I was visiting my dad one time, and he had a personality. He was very humorous, and
Very,
even when you
very.
felt bad or down, he would make you laugh. And so, even though I didn't see him often, there was a period where he was, visiting my dad's church and playing for his home church at St. Abraham Baptist Church at the time. This one particular time, and this is my fondest memory of him. Uh, it was on It was on a Sunday, I believe it was, and me and my cousin Chucky, we were in Sunday school, and
Mm-hmm.
my cousin Chucky, he was a class clown, and so he was doing something in the Sunday school class, and I was laughing so hard, and he and I both ended up getting in trouble. He got in trouble for being disruptive. I think I got in trouble for just simply laughing, and and of course, my father got on me, and so I was feeling bad the rest of the whole service. And so I think at the time he was married, and I think he had some kids. I think he had a little boy,
Yep.
and like typical preachers, you tell your kids go lay hands on him. And so he saw I
Mm-hmm.
was feeling really down, and my spirit was so low, and he was joking and just trying to put a smile on my face. And he told his son, he said, "Go over there and lay hands on him and speak in tongues." And his son did it. And just that moment, I
That
remembered it
sound
for
about
the
right.
rest of my life. And so when I heard that he passed, man, I was like, wow. And then to find out
Yeah.
that was your mentor, because you and I talked the other day because we were supposed to record a couple of days ago, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I hope he don't get offended. But I was like, man, I wonder if he actually know he actually looked like Corey.
No, I'm not offended at all. And people, even that picture you got up,
Yeah.
like I probably was, I think I was 11 in that picture. That was my aunt's
Wow.
wedding.
Wow.
That was my aunt's wedding. Let me do the math. She got married in 2000.
Okay.
So yeah.
So this was in
So that
2000.
like even then. So yeah. No, I'm not offended. To this day, there are some people who still don't know that Corey is not my biological father. There are some people who literally, for years, they thought that Corey was my biological father. No, no, no joke. Like for years, and some people to this day don't know that that's not my biological father. And I'm not offended at all. I mean, not at all.
Yeah.
It's an honor that they would
Wow.
even, as far as I view it, it's an honor.
So let me ask you this because he was your mentor in music, correct? In playing organ keys and everything
Mm-hmm.
like that. What was his philosophy about music and ministry? Did he have one that you remember to this day? What's some of the things that stand out to you the most about what he taught you?
Try until you get it. Try until you get it. Try until you get it. I remember we were sitting. The first hymn he taught me. So the way that he taught me is so funny. I understand it now that I'm older. Back then, I didn't get it the same that, of course, that I see it now. The way that he taught me was within the structure of our service.
Okay.
So everything he taught me was what I was accustomed to hearing on Sunday morning. in the structure of the Sunday morning service at Sweet Hope. And so he literally taught me an opening hymn,
Okay.
prayer chant, a selection, an offering selection, and a sermonic selection. He literally taught me the flow. So the first song he taught me was Pass Me Not, O Gentle Savior, the hymn. Because each thing he started working on with me it was like preparation for, because he was, of course, he was also a preacher. So preparation basically for when I'm not here, you'll be able to play the service. And so I remember sitting in rehearsal with him. We would rehearse prior to choir rehearsal. So he and I would have lessons prior to choir rehearsal. It was most of the time we would have lessons. I remember sitting at the church and him showing me Pass Me Out, O Gentle Savior. And I got that. Then we went to one of the prayer chants we would do would be break me, mold me, melt me, Spirit of a Living God.
Living God. Yeah.
And we would do it in B flat.
Okay.
And then he went to teach me something. I remember it was either the hymn or the prayer chant. I think it was the prayer chant. And it was one chord I kept forgetting to drop to. And I got frustrated. I was about to cry. And he stopped me and said, don't cry. Don't get upset. You keep trying until you get it. And every time we would go do something, he would say, you just try until you get it. He would tell me how he would just catch the bus from his mother's house to the church to just practice, and would literally spend all day practicing. If they had choir rehearsal on Tuesday and choir rehearsal at 7, he would get to the church at noontime and practice from noon until choir rehearsal that night. Just different songs, different things. And so his whole thing was just keep trying. Because if you keep trying, you're going to get it.
Wow. So, and how long was he your mentor before he passed? Like, what was that?
So from when I was around 9, 10, up until he passed, and he passed when I was 18. Yep.
Walk us through that day when you found out that he passed.
Man, I was so I remember he passed early in the morning. I remember I was getting up for school, and it was last year of school, my senior year in high school, and he passed in May. So it was already the end of the school year. And so I got up for school, and at that time I only had 3 morning classes. And so I remember getting up for school, and my grandmother, I can tell something was wrong because the way my grandmother was moving around the house. And she came and sat on the side of the bed and she grabbed my hand and she said, Corey passed. And she started crying before I could start crying. And I just took my time. I got to school late because I was driving at the time. I got to school late, and I remember going to school, and I told one of our close friends who grew up with Corey and their family as well, Devron. I told him and another buddy of ours named Quentin, and we literally just sat against the lockers on the floor in the hallway at Woodlawn. And then later that day, I went over to his parents' house, and we all just hung over there all day until about 2:00 in the morning. And it hurt. It hurt. I remember. I remember it hurt for sure.
You know, getting to know you, Rev, and watching a lot of your sermons. Like, I've been watching a lot of your stuff. I mean,
Okay.
of course. And honestly, when I think about it in retrospect, you and I probably met each other in our younger years and really probably didn't realize it. Because if he was at St. Abraham, you probably were there, and we probably crossed paths and didn't even realize it.
I remember being at St. Abraham. I remember being at St. Abraham in the morning, and we stayed for afternoon service sometime. Went upstairs and ate.
Always the afternoon service.
And I remember me and Kenny, and I cannot think of the other guy's name. We would literally walk across the street sometime to St. Martin's.
Okay.
to go to church at St. Martin's and then come back to St. Abraham. Excuse me, rubbing my nose. My allergies is
Oh,
acting up.
you good, brother?
But
You good?
but I remember going across the street, me, Kenny, and somebody else. I'm trying to think who it was. We probably have sat there together or talked or something and just don't remember.
And don't even remember, man. I tell you.
Hmm.
Listen, so when I look at you now, and I look at where the Lord has brought you from, as you tell your story, because I'm very much aware of the Brent Brown, pastor of Greater Harvest Baptist Church now. I know exactly who you are. Like I told you earlier when we talked a couple of days ago, your name is travel. Even down to the parts of the southern part of Maryland where I am.
Well,
People know who you are, and I would like to argue that Corey actually helped prepare you for this moment as you became a pastor. You know,
indeed.
and so because the church that you pastor now, were you playing for them before you became a pastor?
Yes. So Corey played noonday service for Greater Harvest for
Okay,
years.
okay,
I met Greater Harvest and Reverend Gilliard in a personal way
hmm,
because I started playing noonday service for Greater Harvest.
okay,
And so when I started playing noonday service for Greater Harvest, it matured into filling in for other events, filling in for revivals, or when he would go out to preach, going over there to go out to preach, go with him,
hmm,
and it's funny because I played noonday service. This was before I was even preaching
okay,
as an associate minister. I played noonday service for Greater Harvest. Corey used to back in the day play noonday service for Greater Harvest. His Wednesday noonday was Greater Harvest. His Thursday noonday service was Simmons Memorial. And so
okay,
I remember being at noonday before, even with Corey, a couple times in the summertime at Greater Harvest. And so started off playing noonday service for Greater Harvest. Like I said, it morphed into filling in for different revivals and services and things of that nature. And Reverend Gilliard and I just genuinely became close behind playing for him in different services. If you ever had an opportunity to meet Reverend Gilliard before his passing, it's only one Earl D. Gilliard. There was only one. Now he had a son, Earl D. Gilliard Jr., but I'm telling you, there was only one Earl D. Gilliard Senior, and he was that type of person where you just had to laugh, you had to shake your head, and a list of other emotions and expressions concerning Reverend Gilliard. But he and I became close. And even when I preached my initial sermon, during the time of me preparing for ministry, I was a member of Jesus of Nazareth Free Will Baptist Church. Um, the late Bishop Merlin Bostic was the founder and pastor. And when I was in MIT with her, the church was smaller and the building was smaller. And so she said that I'm going to ask Earl if we can use Greater Harvest for your initial sermon. My initial sermon was scheduled in January.
okay,
Bishop took ill in around March. She passed in April, but she had already scheduled my initial sermon for November at Greater Harvest. So I preached my initial sermon at the church that I now pastor
wow, that's
because
so
my
dope.
former pastor set it up to rent the church for my initial sermon.
Mm,
And so
wow,
all of that started that connection with Reverend Gilliard, even with Corey,
hmm,
and then beyond Corey with me playing.
hmm,
And so you see that whole circle, how it literally just comes around, and even the connection with Bishop Bostic asking to use the building for my initial sermon.
wow. So okay, so I've heard bits and pieces of your story, and I'm glad I got you here. So
Mm-hmm.
we know before you were pastor and you were a musician. If
Mm-hmm.
facts serve me correct, you were cutting hair too. You were a barber before.
Yep. Yep. Yes.
I do my homework. Right? I do my homework.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So walk us through this. How did you find out the moment that you found out that you were going to be the new pastor? Walk us through that moment because all of
Sure.
this is like full circle for you. So walk us through that.
So so Reverend Gilliard, 2015,
Mm-hmm.
he took ill. He took ill around the summertime. He was not officially diagnosed until September, October of 2015. Gets a text message. He said, "Come to my house. I want to talk to you." So when he said my house, I knew it was a level of seriousness because he didn't say come to the church. He said come to my house. So I goes to his house, set up a time. We sit in his family room. And as we sit in his family room, he says, "I'm sick." They told me what's going on. He said, "The Lord told me that you're going to help me." He said, "If I make it through this, you're going to be the pastor because I'm going to retire. I'm going to write a book and I'll just travel and push my book. If I don't make it through this, you're going to be the pastor. Either way, you're going to be the next pastor of Greater Harvest because the Lord told me so." He said, "But now I want you to be my executive pastor to help me through this because I cannot push myself to preach all the time. And so you're going to be the executive pastor." And so I sat there in shock because I was preaching at that time for 3 years.
Okay.
Only 3 years I had only been preaching. And of course, like many of us, I was comfortable playing. I didn't have to preach. But I knew it was something I could not run from. So of course I was preaching. So then I was comfortable preaching and playing and just doing all of that, cutting hair and blah, blah, blah. But then eventually I knew I was going to have to pastor. I just never thought Greater Harvest. And I don't mean that in a negative way because it's one of God's greatest churches. But I didn't think it. Never saw it. And so in that moment, I was shocked, trying to wrap my mind around it. And I only been preaching 3 years. And so I'm trying to wrap my mind around it, thinking like, And of course my mind is, well, you're going to get well. And I kept telling him, you'll be fine. You'll get well. And so September 17, 2016, Reverend Gilliard passed away. Literally almost a year after that conversation. He had already spoken with the church. He spoke with the leaders of the church. And then he spoke with the church as a whole in June 2016 from the pulpit on a Sunday morning after he had preached. He said to the church, if anything happens to me, and the funny thing is, that Sunday I was out preaching. Okay. I came back to the church because that was the Sunday before Hampton. And so I came back to the church. Yep, Sunday before Hampton. Okay. So I came back to the church. My wife and at that time we only had one daughter. They were there at church, and my mother-in-law was there with my wife. They were there. They was upstairs. So I walked in the church. I was downstairs, but of course we have a speaker sometimes, so we can hear. You can hear service and watch service downstairs. So I'm sat downstairs because I just came in and I knew service was almost over. So I'm like, ain't no need to go upstairs. I hear him say, listen, I don't know what the Lord gonna do, but if anything were to happen to me, you all already have a pastor. Do not form a search committee. Just simply form an installation committee because Brent Brown will be your next pastor.
Just like that.
He does not even know I'm in the building. But he says this anyway, and I walked in just before he started having the conversation. The church claps because they respected him, and at the end of the day, the type of leader he was, they were going to go with what he said. Out of respect, out of his leadership and his tenure, he had pastored there 32 years already and was only 58. Respect. And was already their pastor for 32 years. Respect. And so he passed that weekend. The chairman of the deacon board came to me and said, I'm not completely sure of your thoughts, Reverend Brown. However, we know what Reverend Gilliard said. And we've already seen the fruit of you being here in his absence, because June was the last time he preached at the church, and he took off the whole summer and he never made it back until he died. Because he took off, he said he needed to rest, because when he would come to church, of course, people would pull on him. It's their pastor, naturally, try to pull on him, dump stuff on him, all of that. And he said he could not handle all that and try to get well at the same time. His illness progressed and all of that over the summer. And he transitioned September 17, 2016. And so from June straight through, I had already been running the church and preaching every week. And now let me say this clearly. Now, he did not go, I'm going to say, use the term, didn't go down where he did not have authority in his say as the pastor. Because what I did through the summer until those last 2 weeks before he passed was listen to what he told me to do during the stuff. However, the fruit was there that people were still joining, stuff still flowed. As many of the saints at the church like to say, we didn't miss a beat. And so the fruit was there. And so that Sunday, that weekend after he passed, the chairman came to me and said, Reverend, I'm not sure of your thoughts. However, we want to go with what Reverend Gilliard said. Of course, we got to do some official things and review stuff. But however, we want to go. And they did. The deacons voted. Then the church as a whole voted. And it was literally a unanimous vote. And
Wow.
Here we are today.
Wow. So okay, so I want to shift gears a little bit
Sure.
because music is kind of what helped introduce you to Greater Harvest.
Yes.
And you know about music. You told me the other day you love all types of music. All types of music. And so I guess my question is, how important is music to the church? Because you have some denominations who prohibit the playing of instruments in the church, like the Churches of Christ, for example.
Yeah.
Right. And so I guess my question is, how important is music? Like, is it critical? Is it not critical? Because you have experience as a musician and as a pastor. So talk to us about that a little bit.
So for me, music is critical. It is very critical. Not just instrumentation, but music, because instrumentation comes into play, and that's as musicians, we enjoy it. The people enjoy it. But as a whole, music is important. At the end of the day, we are instruments. Our voices are instruments. And so even with giving respect to, as we would say, Churches of Christ, who don't have instruments, yet they sing. They have some of the most beautiful sounding choirs, Churches of Christ, because for some, I can't speak for all, but for some that I've come in contact with, they have some wonderful vocalists, because see, they'll sing what we sing just with no instruments. And so music as a whole, I'll start there, is very vital. We all, in some way, shape, or form, should be a part of the music ministry.
Okay.
Every member of the church, in some way, shape, or form, should be a part of the music ministry. And I say that meaning corporately, we all should use our voice in corporate worship in some way, shape, or form when we're singing. As I said, I love all types of songs, all genres. I love, especially when it comes to church, I love traditional gospel. I love contemporary gospel. I love hymns and anthems. I love classical hymns and spirituals. I literally love it all. I love church, period. And so for me, I love all types of church and all types of music in the church. And so I say that to say, one thing about Greater Harvest, every Sunday, for the most part, is very far in between when we do not do an opening hymn. We're gonna do an opening hymn.
Yes, Allah.
Opening hymn, Reverend, opening hymn. It brings us together. I don't think some people realize why we do an opening hymn. It's not to just fill a gap. It brings us all with one accord
Yeah.
in worship to start off the worship. You know, open that hymnal. And Reverend, I'm all for screens in church. Reverend, let me tell you something. I like to hold a hymnal in my hand.
Yes, Lord.
I'm 33 years old, and I still love. I'm not old. I love to hold a hymnal in my hand.
Yes, Lord.
That's
Yes,
what I
Lord.
love. And so, opening hymn, it brings us together corporately. It brings us together corporately. It starts off the the time of worship, the official time of worship. You know, and so I've. It's important in church. Um, the Bible talks about music. I mean, literally from the beginning to the end,
Yes, sir.
music is weaved.
Yes, sir.
Song singing is weaved in scripture.
Yeah.
Zephaniah talks about how God will sing praises over us. And so if God sings, why can't we sing even if you think you can't sing?
Right. 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 And you know what's so interesting too? Because we talked about how some churches don't like music and the instruments in
Mm-hmm.
the church.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what I found interesting in my study, because I go to Wesley Theological Seminary, and
Okay.
I took some classes on foundations of Christian worship and things like
Nice.
that,
Nice.
and I've been exposed to like James Cone, uh, the spiritual blues, his book, and another
Mm-hmm.
one, a book by a guy named Abington. I'm gonna post them all later. Um,
James Abington.
I believe so. Yeah. Let Mount Zion rejoice. I think it is.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
There you go. Right there. Let
That's
Mount
it.
Zion
That's
rejoice.
it. That's
Let Mount
it.
Zion
That's
rejoice. And then
James.
James Combs, the spirituals and the blues, right? And
Okay.
so,
Now, I haven't read Spirituals and Blues,
oh, it's a good
as,
book. If you can get it, it's a
yeah.
good book. I have it.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, one of the things doing my homework was even in the Bible, we see how music sets the tone for
Yes.
things to happen, for the move of God to happen. Like even in 2 Kings 3:15, you got Elisha, right? And he
Yes, sir.
requested a harpist to play. Then, after he requested a harpist to play, the hand of the Lord came upon him, and he
Yes,
began to
sir,
speak
Reverend.
what thus saith the Lord. So he understood that music set the atmosphere, it set the tone,
Yes, sir.
right? It and so even when the president comes in, music is played, right? When
Don't
before
they strike that? Don't they strike that track right up?
and the tone of the music, it causes everybody to come to order because watch this,
Mm-hmm.
the president is about to walk in.
Yes,
Same
sir.
thing with the house of God. Service is
Mm-hmm.
being called to order. And
Yes,
so when
sir.
you set the tone with music, you understand it sets a whole we millennials, right? It sets a whole vibe, right?
Right, right,
And so it
right,
sets
right.
a vibe spiritually for the move of God to make it
Yeah.
conducive for miracles, signs, and wonders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I appreciate is before you became a pastor, as a musician, you understood how vital music is to the worship experience,
Yes,
right?
sir.
And so even when I think about the African American experience,
Mm-hmm.
our liberation, our salvation, we
Yes,
held on
sir.
to these hymns. And one thing I appreciate about you and Greater Harvest, like I said, I've been watching y'all for some time. Y'all
Mm-hmm.
sing a lot of hymns. You will hold that hymn proud as ever, right?
Oh
You
yeah,
be
not
hold-
ashamed.
and I hear the pipe organ and everything playing, and
Mm-hmm.
I just sit back virtually in the virtual
Yeah.
sanctuary, and I get a
Uh-huh.
kick out of it because it takes me
Yeah.
back to my church, that, where
Mm-hmm.
I go, Christian
Mm-hmm.
Fellowship Baptist Church. Shout out to my pastor Lamont
Yes,
Robinson,
sir.
aka Daddy Pastor, my father-in-law, right? And so,
Yes, sir.
before COVID, we did our hymns, our regular
Mm-hmm.
service, and I used to love presiding
Mm-hmm.
because my brother-in-law played the keys for us. He plays the keys
Okay.
for us, and so he would slide the little the paper
Yeah.
to tell me which song we singing this morning, and when he would
Uh-huh.
hit my favorite ones, we'll understand it better by and by,
Yes,
like them
sir.
ones, the old school
Yes,
stuff,
sir.
And I get my washboard, we be playing, we be have some good old church,
Uh-huh.
and those things mean. Thank God for Kurt Franklin, Tamala Man, but those old
Right.
school hymns mean something, because they take me back to those days when I gave God a yes for the
Yes,
first
sir.
time. We'll
Yes, sir.
understand. Understanding your experience is something like we'll understand it better by and by. At the cross, where I first
Mm-hmm.
saw the light. Like
Yes, sir.
those hymns, they mean so much. And they
Yes, sir.
almost take you back to the basics, man.
It's theology.
Yes,
It's a lot of theology and doctrine is
yes,
pinned in him. You said something. You said even in our liberation.
yes,
I
yes.
mean, we can take singing, even for us, we talking about African American church, black church,
Yeah.
even in the black church, slavery time,
Mm-hmm.
they made it through the day through singing. They
Yeah.
made it through singing became signals.
Yes, it did.
Let's go down by the river. The that was cold to let's go meet. They would call and response songs. That
Yes,
stuff
Lord.
started in cotton fields.
Yes, Lord.
We said
Yes,
you
Lord.
sing one line and you holler back at all this call and response. That stuff started in cotton fields.
Yeah.
Picking cotton, working in a field
Mm-hmm.
as slaves is what I mean, it goes back so far,
Yeah.
especially for us as black people.
Yeah.
We I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I think I love. I like to call it just raw church.
Mm-hmm.
Just raw. Let's just have church. I
Yeah.
mean, and I believe in order, and we're gonna keep some order.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah.
listen, let's just have church. If the spirit flows, and after the hymn, we go normally we go into prayer response, may be fast, prayer response may be slow, prayer response for us may be more classical. One day that thing may just get hyped so high we don't even make it past that before the shout break out. I
Yeah.
mean, like, so I believe it's just a part of us.
Yes,
It's
it
us,
is.
and even with the
Yes.
hymns, it's theology. I mean, thinking about it, blessed assurance, Jesus is
Jesus
mine.
is mine.
Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine. My assurance is found in Him, and I'm blessed behind it.
Yeah.
He's mine. That's my assurance. That like it's literally
Yeah.
theology and doctrine in these hymns, and I will hold them up on a banner high as I can, with no shame. And I mean that, not just out of tradition, what they mean. I mean, many of them are written out of experiences. I mean, you can go to It Is Well With My Soul. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going to take up a whole lot of time with all that because
Yeah.
I'll get to preaching, but, you know, even with It Is Well With My Soul, you think about Horatio Spafford, what he was saying.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote that out of an experience. His children died in a shipwreck. And as he was riding across the water, somebody showed him this is where the shipwreck happened. And that man starts right when peace like a river
Yeah.
attended my way. That's out
Come
of
on here.
experience.
Come on here.
You know that it, I can't get away with him, and I ain't trying to do away with him either. And some of our younger constituents, they'll consider me old, and they say I got an
Same
old
here.
word. And guess
Same
what?
here.
I am not ashamed of it,
No.
and I don't view it in a bad light. God bless you, and thank you for saying it.
Hey, listen. So you mentioned something earlier, and I was finna go off, so I had to keep my composure. You mentioned the word theology, right?
Hmm.
So, and this is
Hmm.
actually one of my questions I had. How important is theology in gospel music? Because, when you look at whether old school songs or contemporary, some
Hmm.
songs actually sound good. The hooks are nice. But when you
Hmm.
really dig into the lyrics, the theology is either bad theology or controversial. And so when
Right.
you look at newer
Right.
songs or contemporary songs versus the old school songs, and you look at, or I guess compare and contrast the theology, you see and hear things differently. So, as a musician and as a pastor, how important is theology in our music?
I think it's extremely important
Mm-hmm.
because we're teaching
Yeah.
someone hears a radio, when someone hears a song on the radio, they they start picking it up, especially songs that are played often. They'll start picking it up, and as they're picking up the song, they start remembering the lyrics, of course, start remembering the melody, lines, and the hooks in the song, and whether or not they know it, when they retain that information, that thing settles in their conscious or subconscious somewhere. And so if I'm singing something that's theologically incorrect, I'm teaching someone something that's incorrect. Whether that's the intent of the writer or not. Because I don't believe it's always people intent, author's intent to mislead. I pray it's not. I don't think it is. But it happens sometimes. Pastor Eric Scott posted on Facebook this week a song he was listening to on the radio. I haven't heard it yet. But somebody kept saying somehow hell no or something in the song. And it was another word that could be considered a curse word. And he was saying, call him old school all you want, but that's going too far. Because if it's a gospel song and being played on a gospel radio station or a spiritual radio station, however they want to word it, you are teaching somebody something, and somebody is saying it's okay to sing this, because here's what's going to happen. That one person did it and it aired on the radio, and they're playing on the radio. So guess what's going to happen? Somebody else going to try it. Somebody else going to cuss in a song and call it gospel music, just like that person is. And I don't know the name of the song. I can't recall it. And I ain't going to take up time going to his Facebook page, but somebody else going to try the same thing. And so we are teaching people, whether we know it or not. We are teaching younger generations of, they may not remember every point in a sermon, but they'll remember a song. My 3-year-old daughter can sing almost the whole music set from the show, that movie in Encanto.
Okay.
Reverend, she don't understand all them words right now, but it's at 3 years old. Is in her. It is in her conscious and in her subconscious.
Wow.
As she gets older, if she keeps singing those songs, she's gonna take stuff from the song, and such is the case even with gospel music. Theologically bad gospel music, it is teaching somebody the wrong way. It's just as bad as a bad sermon. That's just as bad as a bad sermon. In my book, that's just as bad as a bad sermon.
I agree.
You preach it. That's like you gonna get up. Okay, look. Even if we look at it from a controversial standpoint,
Okay.
theologically, many of us do not agree with the quote unquote revelation or illumination that Bishop Carlton Pierce received a few years ago, that literally changed his entire life and his ministry. It's controversial. Now, take that same aspect in thought. That man stands up and says, God loves us and we ain't going to hell. So if I sing that, that's just as bad as him standing up and teaching and preaching that. It's going into somebody's spirit. It's going into somebody's mind. They're thinking through that. And those thoughts in our minds is what we're going to continue to live out and replicate. Yeah. We teach what we know. We preach what we know, what God gives us. And whether we've learned it through a reading, through our schooling, or through any, especially through prayer and revelation, that's what we teach and what we show and what we give to others. When somebody's singing and they are pushing this song and pushing these lyrics and whatever, if it's off, you are teaching people off. And I never want to be in an era where I'm leading the saints in the wrong way. And I think for musicians and artists and for psalmists and all of the like, it should always be taken into consideration. Just because it sounds like a good hook, make sure it's right.
Man, you about to have every musician that's watching this show go back and rethink Thursday rehearsal and Saturday rehearsals. I don't think
I'm just sharing my little two
I don't
nuggets,
think we can
Reverend.
sing this no more. This
I'm just
damn.
sharing my nuggets, Reverend. Reverend, I'm just sharing my little nuggets. That's all.
Hey,
My little convictions. That's it.
no, but it's good though, and that's
Hmm.
necessary, right? Because we have to
Hmm.
have these conversations,
Yeah.
because people are singing, chanting these
Hmm.
things, and it could be bad
Yeah.
theology, and
Yeah.
people take and hold on to these lyrics and live by them,
Yeah.
and say this is what the Lord wants me to
Yeah.
believe, think, and
Right.
live, and how to conduct myself. When all the while it's simply bad theology, whether you singing that theology or whether you preaching that theology or whether you having these conversations and call yourself ministering to people with this bad
Hmm.
theology. Like
Hmm.
you have to be very mindful of what we say is
Yes, sir.
doctrine. That's a whole nother show though about doctrine,
I
right?
was going to say that because we can take into consideration
Yeah.
that doctrinal debate of doctrinal slash theological debate between Trinitarians and
And
those
modulism.
the oneness,
And modulism.
right. They'll do the whole, we can
Oh
use
my
the hymn
gosh.
"Holy, Holy, Holy."
One,
Okay,
one, one. One
right,
way to,
right,
yeah,
right. We can use the hymn "Holy, Holy,
yeah,
Holy." At the
yeah.
end, it says "God in three person, blessed Trinity."
Blessed
That's what
Trinity.
one version says. Those who go by oneness,
Yeah,
they'll say something along the lines of "God is my Savior," something, 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 because they won't sing "God in three person, blessed Trinity" because they're not Trinitarian Christian.
yeah,
I mean, that
yeah.
matters. That cross, it it matters. And there are some churches who will literally shift words in a hymn because of
Just
that.
and this is a side note. So I just finished uh, the spring semester at Wesley, and
Hmm.
I just wrapped up the second part to my systematic theology class. And
Nice.
I took, so the last year I've been taking systematic theology one, systematic theology two,
Hmm.
and so that whole modulism and Trinitarian and
Right.
the Christology, the soteriology, and all this other kind of stuff. When I tell
Hmm.
you, I have literally been in a place, Reverend, about a lot of stuff doctrine
Yeah.
wise. Like I've just been like this, just like that. And in some ways, I told my professor this because he gave us
Mhm.
an opportunity. Shout out to Professor Josiah Young. He gave us the opportunity to have a few words in our last virtual class.
Okay.
And I literally wanted to tell him I want to throw away every sermon I probably have ever preached about a good maybe 55 to 60% of the old sermons I've ever preached before I came into systematic theology
Hmm.
because I'm like, Lord, I feel embarrassed. But see, this is the thing though. You know, the older you get, the more you grow, the more you
Right.
evolve, and the more you
Right.
learn. You know,
Hmm.
and so you can look back and say, this is what I thought, but this is how I
Yeah.
evolved. And so those old sermons are just as important,
Yeah.
even because you get to compare. This is how I've grown, and yes,
Yeah.
I believe this at one point in time, but this is where I sit now, and there's
Right.
nothing wrong with that. It's nothing wrong with that, man.
You're right. I
Yeah.
agree.
Now I
I
want to
agree.
ask.
And I
Uh
understand
huh.
I'm in seminary too.
Yeah.
Shout out to Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology at the
Okay.
Virginia Union University.
Go
And
ahead.
so I
Shameless
understand
plug. Plug in,
exactly
man.
where you are. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so I'm right with you, literally currently with you. And so I
Yeah.
understand and I agree exactly where you are. And it goes back to what I was just saying. We
Mm-hmm.
teach what we know and what we learn and what we were
Yes, sir.
taught, what
Yes,
we
sir.
receive. And
Yeah.
so, such is the case preaching, such is the case with teaching, and singing and
Mm-hmm.
writing music and all of that.
Wow. So this is what I've been wanting to ask you this question, because I've been
Sure.
thinking about stuff that I really want to ask you. Because what exactly is the role of the musician as it relates to the church? What should their lifestyle be, and how much should they dedicate themselves to the craft?
Hmm.
And lastly, do you believe that
Mm-hmm.
just anyone can play for the church? Because some people believe that, and so I know that's a lot, but
No,
go
you
and give it
fine.
to
You
us.
fine. You fine. You fine. Um, from my perspective,
Yeah.
the role of the musician in the church,
Hmm.
number one, is to be in agreement with the senior pastor. Senior pastor is the the God-given authority, is the senior visionary, is the one in whom God has chosen to lead that particular congregation. And so the first thing, first role, first part of the role is to be in alignment with the senior pastor. Because if you are going east and the senior pastor is led to go west, it literally causes division within the church spiritually, from the aspect of, if this is what the Lord told the pastor, the direction that the church should be going, and the musician is going another way, it brings about a spiritual division in the church. The spirit of the house cannot be in sync, because as heavy as the music ministry is within the church, that disconnect causes spiritual division. We all got to go together. Example of that would be Greater Harvest is going to sing hymns. I cannot speak for years down the line when I'm no longer the pastor of that church. As long as Brent Brown is the pastor of Greater Harvest, we're going to sing a hymn. somewhere in there, somewhere.
And that's, I don't care what service it is, it's gonna be a hymn somewhere in there.
It's somewhere in there. Somewhere in, I mean, even if it's a noonday service, we have noonday service. I may not pull a hymnal. I rarely pull a hymnal out on noonday service. But before I preach, I may sing a line of one. Or, I may sing. So somewhere, along there, some up in there, somewhere we want to sing a hymn. If I cannot have a musician that don't like hymns and that don't know hymns. And so that's what I mean with being in sync, with being connected to the senior pastor. So before you play anything, I need to know what you feel. What type of music you like? What are your thoughts concerning the church? Because you can't hate the church, and I love the church, and you just gonna come get a check. So the cohesiveness, the relationship of senior pastor and musician or minister of music is important. I'm close with all my musicians.
Okay.
I knew all my musicians before I was a pastor, and I know it's different because I was playing before I was a pastor. So that cannot be everybody's lot. And I understand that, and I'm not trying to push that on everybody. However, there has to be cohesiveness between the senior pastor and the musician. Got to be on one accord. You got to talk, communicate. I'm not saying you got to go hang out or nothing like that. There has to be open communication consistently. Now, I do not believe, let me say this disclaimer in here, I do not believe that the senior pastor should be in everything every 5 minutes concerning music. Man, you ain't got to be in rehearsal directing the choir. You ain't got to be there picking all the music. Now, do I toss something to my minister of music sometime that I want to hear? Of course. It's a song that I made low. I said, hey, teach this to the praise team. Of course. They're in rehearsal literally right now.
Okay.
I'm not down here, and I'm not down there, and it ain't got nothing to do with me being on here with you. Because if I wasn't on here with you, I wouldn't be down there either. I still wouldn't be down there. Every once in a while, if I'm there, I'll go upstairs and speak. And so, but that relationship got to be there between musician and the pastor. If it's not, that can be a major hindrance to the role of the musician. Because there are some pastors, because from a musician perspective, there are some pastors who hinder the musician. And it's a hinder because the question is, are you all on one accord? What do you agree? Because while there must be an agreement, there's still got to be, let me add this, while there's an agreement, there's still got to be a submission too. Because the musician cannot override the pastor. Yet the pastor still got to give some leeway to the musician to allow the musician to share in his gift and his anointing and his calling and what you believe. And so I'll get lengthy. So to not be too lengthy, the first role I would consider would be to make sure that there is a healthy relationship, I'll say it that way, between the musician and the pastor. because it got to make sure that the vision is intact all around. Because the vision for the house should be weaved throughout every aspect of the ministry. And if the vision for the house is not weaved in music ministry as well, it's not going to work. Literally, there's a spirit. There will be a spiritual divide. And so, role of musician, make sure that there's a connection between the pastor and the musician. You ain't got to be best buds. You need to be able to have healthy dialogue, open communication, be able to talk. Role of musician, in addition, you got to be saved. You got to be saved, because you cannot tap in and flow if you don't even know the Lord. You need to be saved. And it goes back to, and I think this is answering part of your question about, can anybody play?
Right.
Man, you need the pastor ought to make sure that the musician at least know the Lord. Are you saved? I'm not talking about speaking tongues. Are you saved? Do you genuinely know the Lord? Because how can we play the Lord's songs effectively if I don't even know him?
Amen.
I cannot pick it. I'm big on flowing in worship. And so when I say flow, I guess another way for me to say it is being led by the Spirit to navigate through the service. Everything is not written on Sundays. Pandemics has caused us to save money on paper because we don't do bulletins and printouts and things like that anymore. And the funny thing was, we was on our way to stop it. I was going to do like a monthly something, but haven't even done that yet. Saved so much paper, so much money on ink and paper.
Yeah.
We'll probably have to rewrite the lease for the copier machines. And so, they flow. Everything's not written, but I'm following the Spirit and can sense how the wind is blowing, as I would like to say. John talks about how those who are of the Spirit are like the wind. You can't always trace it, you can't always see it, but you are able to gauge the wind and how the Spirit is moving that day. And so if you're not saved, you're not gonna be able to gauge the wind. I don't tell my musician what I'm preaching that week so he can find the song to play after I preach. He's in tune because he's sitting there listening. He's saved enough. He's saved. I ain't gonna say saved enough. My musician's saved. He's saved and has a connection with the Lord. So he's able to listen to what's going on, feel the Spirit that's happening. And when I finish preaching, every once in a while, I might call out a song when I finish preaching, but he picks it. I don't have to pick nothing. I don't have to tell him what to play for that because he's saved. So he's hearing because he's listening to the sermon for himself. In addition, he's going to listen to the sermon to know where to go so he can flow when we're moving through there. You got to be saved. You need to be saved, have a connection with the pastor. It's a lot. Tell me if I'm talking too much. You can stop.
No. You good because you answering questions that that was like one of my last questions that I had for you anyway was what advice do you have for pastors who are looking for musicians? Because sometimes musicians are hard to come by, and so you're actually giving nuggets for people that are actually watching. Well, what should I be looking for? Well, first you got to be saved. You got to be in sync because reality is, if you're not saved, then that's a whole nother conversation about what your theology is, if at all.
Right.
And so you set as a musician, you set the tone, right? And so if your spirit is off, and if the Lord is trying to take me up Minnesota Avenue, but you going down Benton Road, like it's gonna be some problems in the service.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and so that leads me to my next question, the $1 million question. A lot of people are probably asking because you have sat on two ends of the spectrum, musician and pastor, right? And so you've been a musician, you know what that feels like. You're a pastor, you know what that feels like. Should musicians get paid? Where do we see that in Scripture? The rumination regarding musicians, because I was reading the book, Reverend Wyatt T. Walker. He said in his book, Somebody's Calling My Name, he said musicians cost money. musicians cost money. So help us to understand that. Help us unpack that a little bit.
So, Reverend, I said on both sides of the spectrum, as you said, so not to be repetitive, but to be clear, I said on both sides of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Musicians should be paid.
Okay.
I make no question about it. Musicians should be paid. Pay them. Y'all pay these musicians. Now, the question is always asked, and I get this question a lot. What's the going rate right now?
Okay.
Or when should I pay a musician now? And I always respond,
Mm-hmm.
you have to go by your church.
What y'all
Now,
comfortable
I'm not saying make the church go broke to pay a musician, because you
with? Yeah.
cannot do that. You should not do that. Let me say that. You should
Absolutely.
not do that. Do
That's
not go broke. The pastor should not take a cut so that I can get a musician.
mm,
I should not have the BGE bill late because I got to pay a musician. But you
hello.
got to pay them, and
Hello.
you should pay based on what the church can genuinely afford. One. Secondly, pay based on based on the skill set,
Mm-hmm.
the background, and all of that of the musician. But
Mm-hmm.
it's still gotta be within the confines of what is affordable for your ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And so pay. Now, biblically, Bible talks about uh, uh, servant is worthy of his hire.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, we always contextually give it give that scripture to the pastor,
Mm-hmm.
but when we view a musician from the perspective of a servant, why not pay the servant?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we always try to push that scripture for preachers.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, a, a, a musician is a servant,
Mm-hmm.
should be, and so you pay them, you pay them, and I think they should be paid. Don't go broke. You do what you can do,
Mm-hmm.
but they should be paid. I mean, right now in Baltimore, there's been a musical shift with musicians. Some music because of the pandemic. Some
Mm-hmm.
musicians left where they were because the churches could not afford them. And that flip side is musicians. Um, not every musician can be a full time musician,
Mm-hmm.
and I think musicians need to realize that as well. Not every musician can be a full time musician. Get a job. What you gonna do when you get old? What you gonna do when you get old? The percentage of mega churches in our country
Mm-hmm.
has always been small in comparison to the number of churches as a whole.
Yeah.
They, when you look at all these churches, the majority is less than 10% of churches that will be considered a mega church,
Yeah.
and they're the ones who can offer retirement and packages and things of that nature. That's far few in between. Go get a job, musicians. Get a job so you can have some retirement, some social security.
Yeah.
And when your church give you that 1099, you need to file your taxes. Because don't get no taxes. Most may not get taxes taken out, but they'll 1099 them, and then they don't want to file it and get mad. Well, you got all your money up front. You better file it. You won't get old and can't collect Social Security if it's still around.
Mm-hmm.
You won't be able to do none of that because I played, and then they get mad at the church. The flip side is you got to be wise enough to take care of yourself as well.
Yeah.
And so do your what I like to call do your level best.
Mm-hmm.
Do your level best at paying a musician what you can afford. Some people go out the way because they want top notch. Some people do. Listen, you got to be prayerful that God send you
Yeah.
who you can get and pay them what you can affordably pay them. But yes, pay musicians.
But you know,
Yes.
you know what's interesting, Pastor. To that point, some musicians won't play unless you pay.
Hmm.
I remember back in the day, musicians were dedicated to the craft so much so, and loved God so much. Sometimes, even if you didn't have anything to pay them, they were still gonna play if there was a need. Like I can recall times to where my dad may have gone to a church or whatever, and of course he played for Saint Abraham, but if they needed a drummer for the service, he gonna hop on them drums because that's
Exactly.
you got some musicians today that won't play. Oh, that ain't my pastor. I ain't gonna play for like
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole nother thing. But it's just
It
like
is. You think? Yeah, and I agree. I think I think the difference with us, we were raised in church.
yeah,
Some of
yeah,
us were raised in church. I was raised in Sweet Hope, and when I started playing the keyboard, of course they did not pay me. First of all, I was just learning, so I didn't deserve to be paid.
yeah,
Second of all, I think a problem we see is there's a generation of musicians, as I was speaking to about getting older. There's a generation of musicians who did not get jobs and they were full-time musicians. And they are older now and they don't have benefits. They have no retirement, so they still play. And some of them play all the time, not because they desire to, but because if they don't have any money.
yeah,
There's a generation that, and in that generation, they've gotten older, and they've gotten bitter. And so you see them and you hear them fussing about the church. You see and hear them fussing about a pastor and talking about they were mistreated, and they're fussing about they wasn't treated right. And I came and I played, and if I didn't play, the service wouldn't have been what it was. And they take that whole perspective and they get upset and frustrated, and they're bitter and angry and upset with the church. I think other generations under have seen that.
yeah,
And because they've seen that, they say, I'm not going to let that happen to me.
yeah,
So they become so business minded with the church. So what's the budget, Doc?
yeah,
That's the question. What's the budget, Doc? How much is it paying? Because they've seen that generation get older, and now they are bitter and they frustrated. And I love them all dearly. I love the older, I love the younger, I love my age, I love in between and everywhere else. But I seen it myself. I see it. They 65 years old fussing on Facebook about a pastor in a church.
yeah,
And so you got younger musicians who see it.
yeah,
They see it. And so now in their mind, oh, I'm not going to let them do me like they did so and so. And now, if you ain't got my money, I ain't going to play. If we were raised in church. I've been to preach somewhere and there was not a musician. I played the service and I got up and preached as the guest. As the guest, Reverend. And they brought me to preach.
yeah,
And because there was no musician, I played. It happened on a Sunday morning before. At a church I went to preach at, no musician. And I played and I got up and preached. And I was there just as the guest preacher.
listen,
But we was raised in church.
Yeah.
Our heart is there.
yeah,
Some people are so adamant on, I ain't letting them get over me. I ain't gonna let them use me. And that has to be a healthy level of that, though. I mean, that does have to be it has to be a healthy level of it, because some people will intentionally try to take advantage. They can do and they just won't do. So it does have to be a healthy level of it.
yeah,
Because I remember Corey said to me before he passed, and I really started playing out a whole lot. I was a teenager. I was like 16, 17. I had a car, and people was asking me to play, and I was ripping and running everywhere. And he said to me, don't you let people use you, because they will have you play for their service all night long and give you a chicken box. And what he meant was, and what he was talking about, and I will not call names or nothing, but what he was talking about was those who can do and just won't do. You're not talking about the ones who genuinely cannot do. But there are a group of churches and people and pastors who can do and they just refuse to do, because they in their mind, I'm not going to do it. Those are the ones that he was talking about. Don't let them take advantage of you. But here's what that goes back to what we were just talking about before this. You got to be saved so you can discern.
That's important.
And you got to be led to win. And you got to be saved because you need to be able to discern that. You have to be able to discern that. There are some people who cannot do, but you can be led to help. There are some people who can do, and they just call themselves ain't gonna do.
One last question for you. Your
Mm-hmm.
which your Mount Rushmore of musicians? Who, if you could choose four, who would be the greatest for you? Your Mount Rushmore.
Personally, number one, Gary Stewart Jr. That is my minister of music, and I don't say it just because he's my minister of music. Gary can play. Gary can flow. He got it. He can go wherever we need to go. If we need to go contemporary, we need to go traditional. We want to do a hymn. If I want to sound like Detroit church, if I want to sound like I'm in the back of the woods church,
If you at your
if I want
washboard,
to sound like yard dogs in the backyard, he gonna go either way. And so I don't say that just because he's my minister of music. I literally mean that. I thank God that he sent Gary Stewart to Greater Harvest, and he's a part of my life and my family. And so Gary Stewart, number one.
yeah,
Patrick Austin.
okay,
Patrick Austin is well accomplished musician who I genuinely feel is the same way of as Gary, can go either way. Literally. Any way you want to go. So for me, I think it's more about flexibility and being able to go with, as I was saying, how John talks about those are the spirit of the wind. However the wind gonna blow, you need to be able to catch it and go with it.
right,
And so for me, those who are able to float in between and on all areas, I love it. I love that. So Gary, Patrick Austin. There's a guy in town, you may know him because he been playing for everybody. James Ash.
name sounds familiar.
Yes, Patrick Austin, Gary, James Ash, Patrick Austin, and my other musician, Derek Lee. That's family to me. Those four gentlemen, they are that's that for me. That's my picks. And I'm sorry for everybody else who's gonna get mad if you watching this. I apologize. I love everybody. I love everybody. You all know I love everybody. And if I could say more, I could, but you asked for four. So four, if I'm choosing between four, that's my four.
That's what. Listen, man, I appreciate you for coming on. This was a healthy, robust conversation, man. Hey, listen, do me a favor. Shout out your church. I know this is also your fifth pastoral anniversary month. Happy anniversary to
Yep.
you.
Thank you.
You just had Bishop Walter Scott Thomas last night at the
And
church.
he destroyed.
Tore it
Yes,
up,
sir.
destroyed it. You still trying to put the paint back on the walls and
Yes,
repaint
sir.
it. You know, and
Yes, sir.
so give us your church information, your service times, where folk can find you, all
Certainly.
that good stuff.
Thank you for the opportunity to do that. Greater Harvest Baptist Church is one of God's greatest churches. Greater Harvest Baptist Church in Baltimore, Maryland, 1617 West Saratoga Street, on YouTube, Greater Harvest Church Baltimore, on Facebook, Greater Harvest Baptist Church. On Instagram, follow us at Greater Harvest BC. I believe the same is for Twitter. Twitter, I think is GHBC 1617. We tried to make all this stuff the same, but you know people be taking that stuff up.
Yeah.
And so Twitter is GHBC 1617. And so like and subscribe YouTube channel. Follow us on all social media. We have 2 Sunday morning worship services in person. We're back in person and virtual. 8:30 a.m. is our early morning service, and 11 a.m. is our what we call more traditional time. And of course, that service is a little more hyped up and all of that, just because of the nature of the time and the saints that come out at 11 a.m. We have a good time at 8:30 too, so don't get me wrong. I don't slight 8:30 service at all. Wednesday noonday service. We have a noonday service every Wednesday, 12 noon to 1 p.m. 1 hour. You can come on out in person or virtually online, as well as Wednesday evening Bible study 6:45, and of course This Wednesday, Bishop Kevin Daniels, St. Martin's Church of Christ, going to be in the house to help us continue the celebration. 5 years, God has blessed me to pastor Greater Harvest Church, and I am humble and I'm grateful, and I am excited to continue to work for God by serving Greater Harvest. Reverend Curl, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity and the privilege to come talk
Man,
and
thank
share
you for
with you
coming, man.
and your audience and all of your subscribers and people who follow you. Thank you. Thank you.
Man,
Thank you.
man, listen, before you go, y'all make sure y'all do a couple things, man. Make sure y'all follow me. I'm everywhere on social media. Let me get all this stuff up here. Follow me on YouTube at Deontay Curl, no apostrophe. That's where all of my shows go, sermons, everything. Just go on there, you can find it. Also follow me on Twitter. My Twitter, where's my Twitter? I gotta find it. I ain't been on here so long. I've been taking the social media hiatus, Pastor. So
Okay.
my social media hiatus. But anyway, follow me on Twitter at Deontay J. Curl, no apostrophe. Also, I'm on Instagram. Follow me there at Deontay Curl, all one word, no apostrophe. And also follow me on Facebook at Deontay J. Curl Sr. Deontay J. Curl Sr. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. This is going to air on Monday night, Pastor. So yeah. So
Yes, sir.
and I ain't even put no fly out yet. So I know some people going to trip out the fact that you came on here tonight. And
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
and listen,
Listen,
we're gonna stay in touch, man.
for sure.
We're gonna
For
stay in
sure, for
touch.
sure.
I'm
We can
coming.
get up. You ain't that far.
Huh?
I said we can get up. You ain't that far.
Oh yeah, man. Listen, I
You
love
ain't
to
that
drive.
far. We can meet in the middle.
I love to drive, man. We gonna have to do
For
lunch or
sure.
something, man. I'm gonna come to
Yeah,
one of these
we
noonday
can
services.
we can meet in the middle.
Yeah, we can meet. But listen, I love you. Send my love to the wife and the
Yes, sir.
girls.
Yes, sir.
Man, and
Yes,
listen,
sir. I love you too, man. Appreciate it.
thank y'all so much. Listen, there's so much going on. No matter what's happening, don't let nobody take your voice. Whatever's going on, do me a favor and say it with your chest. I'm Reverend Deontay Curl. I love y'all so much. Y'all be good. Until next time, y'all take care of yourselves, love yourself, and take care of each other. Be blessed.
Yes, sir.
What's happening? This is Deontay Curl, host of Turn Up the Volume podcast. Listen, do me a favor. If you like this video, do yourself a favor and hit the subscribe button. Also, tap the bell and turn on all of your notifications to see this and more interviews and more shows from my podcast right here on my YouTube page. So y'all hit that like button, tag, share, and subscribe. Y'all be good.